The stories presented in this video are real, but we have changed the characters' names and altered images to protect their identities. The creator of this video is not an investigative officer. These narratives have been sourced from various internet platforms. Our intent is not to accuse or target anyone in particular. Thank you for understanding.
Welcome to True Crime Stories Hub. Today we're going to take a look at another The Best Cheating story based on a true story. At the end of the story, you will know that this is one of the best wife betrayal stories or husband's fatal betrayal stories. The cops closest to a crime scene were forced to perform the unhygienic duty of picking through rubbish on the evening of June 23, 1993. John Bobbitt was the owner of the penis they needed to locate. His wife, Lorena, had cut it off while he was asleep. 31 years have passed. John and Lorena are still living, and their tale will always be remembered. The story of John and Lorena Bobbitt, a former American couple, left the world in awe of the human capacity for extraordinary daring. On June 18, 1989, John Wayne Bobbitt wed Lorena Gallo. John grew up in Niagara Falls after being born in New York. Regretfully, his father was absent, and at the young age of 3, he was separated from his drug-addicted mother. He moved in with his aunt and uncle along with his 2 brothers. According to John, his aunt and uncle brought him up to be religious, and he grew up in a big family. Every Sunday, the family attended church, and John was happy to participate in. John joined the Marines when he reached adulthood since many of his buddies were doing the same. Being alone with all of his pals gone made no sense to John, so he found a new family in the United States. Marines. Conversely, Lorena was reared in Venezuela despite being born in Ecuador in 1969. She certainly began to migrate at a young age. She had grown up watching a lot of American television, which sold her the American dream, as Lorena described in her Amazon video. When she arrived in America on a student visa, her hopes became a reality. Northern Virginia Community College is where Lorena enrolled and studied. In 1988, while still in the Marine Corps, John went to an officer's ball and met Lorena. For John and Lorena, it didn't matter whether you relegated love at first sight to the pages of corny romance novels. The chemistry between them was amazing, and they were drawn to one another. Although John said she was quiet and didn't speak much English, they clicked right away. So they did just that. They began dating. They were married in 9 months. On June 18, 1989, John Bobbitt married Lorena. An interview with 20 to 20 revealed that the couple's accounts of how they became engaged varied. According to John, Lorena asked him to marry her in front of her mother. According to Lorena, the opposite was true. A justice of the peace officiated their modest wedding. John goes on to say that their wedding was not hurried by love or foolish fondness for one another. Lorena wanted to stay in America and her student visa was about to expire, so they were married hastily. Who was John to refuse her the opportunity to live in America, which had been her lifetime dream? This was only one example of how their stories varied. Lorena claims that the abuse began as soon as they were married. John's tale is different. According to his story, he didn't hurt, rape, or physically touch Lorena. It was difficult to determine what was happening with the pair because he always kept to his tale when questioned. John went on to say that he occasionally had to restrain her when she began to fight him. Through his evidence, he defended his innocence and cleared himself of Lorena's assault allegation. Lorena related her version of her husband's assault, which was different from John's. John began driving carelessly while the couple was in a car a month after their wedding. For her life, Lorena feared. Who wouldn't be? She put her hands on the steering wheel in terror and pleaded with him to stop. In an attempt to reroute them, she stepped in. According to the accusations made against him, John punched her for the first time at that same moment. Lorena was upset when John proposed a divorce on June 22, 1993. She sought assistance from the police because she was still afraid of him. The purpose of the journey was to obtain a protective order against John. The procedure took roughly 3 hours, but Lorena departed before finishing it since she didn't want to wait that long. John and his friend, who had come to stay with him, went out drinking early that night. Before he went to sleep, he raped Lorena when he got home. John claimed he had no memory or knowledge of what had happened when he woke up. He had no recollection of having sex with Lorena, and the only physical contact he could hazily recall was petting. Lorena returned home from work on June 23, 1993, just like any other day. That evening, John returned home and sexually assaulted her. The behavior appeared to be more commonplace than an isolated incident. Then Lorena went to get a cup of water in the kitchen. Among the kitchen tools was the knife that would allow her to breathe easier from the torture device her husband used to hurt her. Lorena entered the bedroom carrying an 8-inch Jinsu carving knife that she had noticed on the kitchen counter. After removing the sheets, Lorena cut off John's member. Lorena left the apartment shortly after, climbed into a car, and drove off while holding the severed appendage in one hand. The road became too difficult to navigate with one hand on the wheel while the other grasped a severed member as she continued to drive. Soon after, she flung the shaft into a field beside Maplewood Drive via a window. Uncertain of what to do or who to call, she drove around. She eventually came to a halt and called 911, explaining the situation and providing instructions on where to locate her husband's missing appendage. After arriving, the cops went to work. They located John's lost appendage after a thorough search, cleaned it with antiseptic, and stored it in an icebox. He was then taken to a hospital by paramedics. In a nearly 10-hour surgical procedure, the physicians reattached it. Around 4 a.m. in the morning of 1993, the incident took place. By evening, the police had taken Lorena into custody and accused her of malicious wounding. If convicted, she may face up to 20 years in prison. He always has an orgasm, and he doesn't wait for me ever to have an orgasm, Lorena Bobbitt allegedly told the police after she was detained. He is self-centered. A tape recorder captured the ensuing conversation with Detective Peter Wentz. The tape transcript read at the trial was read by Mary Grace O'Brien, the Prince William County Assistant Commonwealth Attorney prosecuting Lorena. During the trial, numerous aspects of the couple's relationship were brought to light. Lorena had not been pleased in their home, which was a bit unstable. Details of the incident leading up to the final act were disclosed by the Bobbitts. John was accused by Lorena of sexually, physically, and emotionally assaulting her. Furthermore, he compelled her to abort a pregnancy and publicly displayed his infidelity. According to the testimony of an expert witness, Lorena was imprisoned by John's threat. "Whether we are separated or divorced, I will still find you. I will have sex with you whenever I feel like it, wherever I find you." Blair D. Howard, the defense attorney, insisted that Lorena had acted in self-defense and temporary insanity. He said that Lorena's outburst was caused by John's actions and persistent harassing. Clinical depression had been plaguing her. One would probably be dealing with a mentally disturbed individual in addition to a boatload of post-traumatic stress disorder. The defense contended that everything was the result of John's ongoing maltreatment of his wife. John rejected all of the accusations of harassment and abuse, but he struggled to remain consistent during Howard's cross-examination, contradicting his own statements with established facts. He undermined the prosecutor's case during the interrogation. According to Lorena's evidence, before to the night of the assault, there had been other instances of physical abuse and earlier rapes. She disclosed that their financial situation was precarious and that John had not only embezzled her money but also spent them. Other witnesses said they saw scrapes and bruises on Lorena, which supported her accounts. According to testimony from John's acquaintances, John told them how he dominated her, had intercourse with her against her will, and controlled her. Both the defense and the prosecution's lawyers concurred that John had a history of mistreating his wife, and that the assault was the culmination of several incidents. According to the conclusions of the expert witnesses on both sides, Lorena had been beaten and mistreated continuously, and by 1993, she was afraid of John. John was on trial from November 8 to November 10, 1993, prior to Lorena's trial. A jury consisting of 3 men and 9 women found him not guilty of marital abuse on November 11, 1993. Various accounts of what transpired between midnight on June 22, 1993, and the early hours of June 23, 1993, were provided by John Bobbitt. According to one report, he claimed that they had not had intercourse and that he was too exhausted to have sex, despite Lorena having started it. According to another account, he claimed to have slept through the entire act of their having intercourse. But that wasn't a rape. The sex was voluntary. The jurors decided that Lorena was the most credible after 7 exhausting hours of deliberation. Because she was temporarily insane, she was ruled not guilty. Lorena spent 45 days in a mental health facility on January 24, 1994. The examination process at Petersburg Central State Hospital lasted for 45 days. She was freed on March 1, 1994, when it was determined that she posed no threat to society or herself. John and Lorena Bobbitt completed their divorce in 1995. What transpired between Lorena and John Bobbitt was the result of a sequence of circumstances. It might appear prejudiced to recount what happened without considering them. John Bobbitt was the victim, thus his amputated penis received as much attention and feeling as possible. Furthermore, because of what had transpired, several feminists disapproved of Lorena's actions, fearing that they might have far-reaching effects. However, that would be a biased account. After being released from the Marines in 1991, John's income was no longer consistent. Everyone will agree that any household may experience a slowdown if they lose a reliable and consistent source of income. He struggled to get or hold a job. Lorena eventually found herself the only provider for the home. During this period, Lorena worked as a manicurist in a beauty shop and as a nanny in the Virginia area. Soon after, Lorena became good friends with Jenna Bisutti, the salon's owner. Lorena began embezzling Bisutti's money in October 1991. After discovering the embezzlement, Bisutti ordered Lorena to return the approximately $7,000 she had stolen, plus interest. Although Lorena could continue working at the salon, she sought for other opportunities to pursue her newfound passion of stealing. She was sentenced to community service after being caught stealing a couple clothes from Nordstrom. They both offered differing accounts of what transpired after Lorena had an abortion that same year. Lorena claims that while she was thrilled to begin a family, John did not react to the news with the same fervor as Lorena did. She goes on to say that John offered leaving Lorena if she kept and had the child since he didn't think he could care for it. Lorena chose to have an abortion because she was afraid of raising a kid by herself, and she insisted that John was the reason for it. In contrast, John related that Lorena had concurred that the moment was not appropriate for the couple to become parents. Together, they made the decision to have the abortion. John was still in debt following the tragedy. He attempted to start a band named the Severed Parts in order to raise money to cover his escalating legal and medical expenses. The band didn't make any money and wasn't successful. John made an appearance in the pornographic film John Wayne Bobbitt Uncut in September 1994. John Bobbitt met Ron Jeremy after he relocated to Las Vegas following the trial. John talked candidly about the pornographic film in an interview with Vanity Fair. Although my penis wasn't completely cured, a porno felt like the greatest way to demonstrate that it had worked. Now I see that was the purpose. When John's new girlfriend Christina Elliott filed charges against him, The film had not yet been released. He was convicted of domestic violence and misdemeanors. The judge sentenced him to 15 days, of which 12 days were served. After divorcing Lorena in 1995, John starred in another pornographic movie in 1996. One would question why his phallus needed to appear on displays and what the endgame was. At least to him, his explanation made sense. In addition to the financial aspect, John accepted Howard Stern's offer to get his penis considerably expanded through reconstructive plastic surgery. The second pornographic film, Frankenpenis, came out in 1996. John had racked up a number of court troubles for himself in 1999, from violence to assault. After taking $140,000 worth of apparel in Nevada, he entered a guilty plea to a felony charge of attempted grand larceny. He was convicted by a court that same year of harassing Desiree Abe Luz, his ex-girlfriend. He was once again accused of assaulting Joanna Farrell, his third wife, in 2002. He was acquitted after being found not guilty. Following the trial, Lorena turned to maintaining a low profile. She went back to using her given name, Gallo, in order to accomplish that. She visited her birthplace of Ecuador in October 1996, where she had a formal dinner with Abdallah Bucaram, the current president. Then, as godfather and godmother, the odd couple baptized a kid together. The media was divided by their relationship. Even the president's supper with Lorena drew criticism. Lorena made headlines once more in 1997 after being accused of assaulting her mother. According to reports, she struck Elvia Gallo while they were watching TV. Her mother stayed with Lorena after she was quickly cleared of the allegation. Dave Bellinger was there when Lorena Gallo returned to the community college. After falling in love in the late 1990s, the two have remained together ever since. Despite not being married, they share a daughter named Olivier. Their decision to remain single is thought to be a result of Lorena's anxiety of getting married again after her previous marriage failed. Lorena Gallo established a nonprofit in 2007 with the goal of assisting women in violent relationships. The nonprofit organization she founded, Lorena's Red Wagon Foundation, assists victims of domestic violence. Prior to their one and only joint television appearance in 2009, Lorena and John were never spotted together in public. Throughout their trial, the pair did interviews before, during, and after, but never together. When The Insider brought them together in 2009, that changed. During the interview, Lorena informed John that the Lorena docuseries, which debuted on Amazon in 2019, rekindled discussions about Lorena Bobbitt's allegations of marital rape and domestic abuse. The Bobbitts were the talk of the 1990s and the opening act for all of the nation's comedians. Today, it would undoubtedly react differently. In an interview with Olivia Bede Waxman, Lorena Gallo shares her feelings regarding the media coverage of her case. She went on, bemoaning the fact that the younger generation was unaware of the story and its development. She revealed that there was a past behind what transpired. She went on to describe how she led the police and detectives to the location where she had dumped the member of her ex-husband. She claims that her assistance in locating her ex-husband's member demonstrated that she was not spiteful and that the occurrence was not motivated by retaliation. She said that she would have responded to them indifferently if she had done it with malice. John Wayne Bobbitt says virtually little about the incident, except for the TV show where they first met in 2009. Although they don't see each other very often, he acknowledges that he still feels something for Lorena. In an interview, John stated, "I loved the woman she was." It appeared that John Bobbitt was unable to avoid trouble, despite the fact that the incident had made him famous and featured him in 2 pornographic films. However, he appeared to have moved on from the incident. As of 2019, Forrest Fenn said that Bobbitt lived in North Las Vegas and was looking for treasures hidden in the Rockies, while his ex-partner now runs a foundation for women who have survived domestic abuse, according to Vanity Fair. John said he was using the settlement he obtained from a 2014 vehicle accident to pay his debts in the August 2018 issue of Vanity Fair. In an attempt to undo the cosmetic procedures he had done in the past, he also disclosed to the magazine that he underwent a penile reduction surgery in 2016. John continues to insist on his innocence. He said that Gala was never mistreated, as reported by the New York Times. She was the abuser, and when I decided to leave her, she severed my penis. The events of Lorena and John Bobbitt took place during a period when patriarchy was still prevalent and laws prohibiting marital rape were only beginning to be implemented in the 50 states of the U.S. Although the incident and her own narrative served as inspiration for Lorena, she regrets the larger picture that the sensationalist media of the day made sure people missed. To a certain extent, John's genitalia became more well-known than the root cause, which was spousal abuse and violence. The phrase "bobbitize" appeared everywhere, from advertisements to t-shirts. Her story might have been different today. Lorena's role would have received more attention from the public and media than it did in 1994. Without a doubt, Lorena Gala wants to utilize her foundation to end the system that gives men more power because they have phallus, because she believes that women should be heard and supported. In her conversation with Lorena Gala, Amy Chozick characterized her as direct and honest. "I'm still Lorena Bobbitt. I know that." According to Heather Sten of the New York Times, Lorena remarks, "That name, it's significant here." Lorena marveled at Amy's progress and what she had accomplished for herself as she drove her around the neighborhood where it all took place. "I'll put myself through the jokes and everything, as long as I can shine a light on domestic violence, sexual assault, and marital rape," Heather Sten cited her as saying. She had no time to second-guess her decision to amputate her husband's penis. She said, "How can you regret something you didn't mean to do?" in response to Amy's question about if she regretted doing that. A lady like Lorena would have been praised today for advocating for herself and speaking up for those who lack a voice. Regardless, she inspires in a lovely and sensitive manner. Additionally, she suppressed her struggle against domestic abuse, even though it was inadvertent.